You're not welcome here." "Oh," my daughter's fiancé barked, ordering the security guards to throw me out of the wedding. "This celebration is only for important people," he added, sneering at my humble suit. But when his father saw me and exclaimed, "John Miller, is that really you?" the groom's whole world crumbled. He had no idea who I truly was. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're tuning in from in the comments. My old pickup truck looked like a rust bucket parked between the Mercedes and Lexus in their circular driveway. The Harrington estate stood tall before me, like something out of a movie. Marble steps, brass fixtures gleaming in the afternoon sun, manicured hedges trimmed to perfection. I checked my watch, 2 p.m., just as my daughter, Sarah, had asked. The front door opened before I could even reach for the doorbell. A tall man in pricey casual clothes scanned me up and down with undisguised distaste. His eyes lingered from my worn boots to my best suit, a navy blue one I'd bought for Sarah's graduation from UCLA 6 years ago. "You must have the wrong address, sir. This isn't a shelter," he sneered. "Try the next street over." His words hit me like a slap. I stood frozen on their perfect doorstep, my mouth opening and closing without sound. Heat flooded my face as I tried to process what he just said. "Dad, you made it." Sarah's voice rang out from behind him, bright and warm. She appeared in the doorway wearing a flowing dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Her face lit up with joy as she pushed past the man, Greg, her fiancé, and threw her arms around me. Come in. Come in. I've been watching for you from the window." She grabbed my arm and pulled me forward, completely oblivious to what had just happened. "Greg, this is my father, John Miller." She introduced me proudly. "Dad, meet Greg Harrison, my amazing fiancé." Greg's expression shifted instantly, like an actor changing masks. The sneer melted into a forced smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. He extended his hand with the kind of reluctance you'd show a diseased animal. "Mr. Miller, of course. Sarah's mentioned you," he said with a barely there smile. His handshake was brief and dismissive. "Please, come inside." Sarah beamed between us, squeezing my arm tighter. "Isn't this perfect? My two favorite men finally meeting." I managed a nod, swallowing the bitter taste in my mouth. The foyer stretched out before us like a cathedral. Crystal chandeliers casting rainbows on marble floors, oil paintings, and gold frames lining the walls. My reflection stared back from polished surfaces, looking small and out of place. "Your home is very impressive," I said, forcing the words out. "Thank you," Greg replied, straightening his shoulders. "It's been in the family for generations. We believe in maintaining certain standards." The emphasis on standards wasn't lost on me. Sarah, still glowing with excitement, missed it entirely. "Wait until you see the dining room, Dad. We're having your favorite pot roast with mashed potatoes. Well, our chef's version of it." She laughed, linking her arm through mine. "I told him you appreciate good, honest food." Greg's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Yes, we've adapted the menu for today. Come on, both of you." Sarah pulled us toward an arched doorway. "I can't wait to show Dad around before dinner." As we walked deeper into their palatial home, I caught Greg watching me in every mirror and polished surface we passed. His gaze felt like ice water down my spine, calculating and cold. Sarah chattered happily about wedding plans and family histories, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "The dining room seats 24, but we'll be cozy at the small table today," she explained, leading us into a room that could have housed my entire apartment. "Greg's parents are traveling, so it's just us three." The small table was mahogany, surrounded by chairs that looked like they belonged in a museum. Place settings sparkled under yet another chandelier. Multiple forks, crystal glasses, cloth napkins folded into perfect triangles. I'd eaten my breakfast this morning off a paper plate in my kitchen. Sarah pulled out a chair for me. "Sit here, Dad. You'll have the best view of Greg's grandmother's china collection." Greg took his place at the head of the table, his posture radiating ownership. Every movement was calculated, designed to remind me whose territory this was. The chair beneath me felt like a throne I had no right to occupy. "So, Mr. Miller," Greg began, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey. "Sarah tells me you're recently retired. That must be quite an adjustment." "It has its moments," I replied shortly, sensing a trap. "Sarah worked at the same factory for 37 years, she chimed in, her voice full of pride. Can you imagine that kind of dedication, Greg? Indeed, I can. Greg's smile grew sharper. Loyalty is so important, isn't it? Knowing one's place. Understanding where one belongs. The waiter appeared with the first course, a delicate soup served in bowls so fine I was afraid to touch them. I could already feel the tension thickening in the air as Greg and I exchanged brief glances. I watched him with a silent intensity, my thoughts racing. What had Emily seen in him? Where had this polished, self-assured man come from? And why did he feel the need to make me feel small, like a relic from a different world? Emily was oblivious to the subtle conflict swirling beneath the surface, diving into a conversation about wedding details, seating charts, and future family gatherings. The reception venue is set, she said enthusiastically. It's going to be at this beautiful country club out in Lake Forest. You'll love it, Dad. It's elegant, just what we always talked about. Greg nodded but didn't respond, his attention briefly drifting toward his phone. He looked up just as I was about to take a bite. So, Mr. Miller, he said again, his voice warm with feigned interest. Have you given any thought to the wedding budget? We were talking about it earlier, and I'm sure you'll want to contribute something. The words stung, more than they should have. I felt the muscle in my jaw tighten, but I kept my face neutral. I didn't need to play his game. Emily and I have discussed what I can manage, I replied, keeping it short. Of course, Greg said, a hint of condescension creeping into his tone. You know, with the costs of a wedding these days, it can be a bit overwhelming for someone on a fixed income. Emily's eyes lit up as she jumped in. Dad's been incredibly generous. He's giving us his savings for the honeymoon. Her voice held an innocent joy, and I could hear the pride in her words. Greg raised his glass with a practiced smile. How touching, he said, but his words didn't reach his eyes. Every little bit helps, doesn't it? I felt the heat crawl up my neck. $1,000 for a suit. Greg's words rang in my ears like a slap. The irony wasn't lost on me. He, a man who likely spent more on a single dinner than I earned in a month, trying to buy my dignity with a generous offer. I focused on my food, my fork trembling slightly as I cut into the artistically arranged pot roast, its carefully crafted appearance only a reminder of how far apart our worlds were. My appetite vanished. Emily, still oblivious to the tension, chatted happily about wedding ideas and how much fun she was having planning everything. I kept my responses short, nodding occasionally, my thoughts elsewhere. Rick, meanwhile, had turned the conversation back toward money, his words dripping with something just short of sympathy. I imagine retirement can be financially challenging, he said. Fixed income and all that must make things difficult for you. I glanced at Emily. Her eyes were fixed on her plate, avoiding my gaze. She had already formed her opinion, already believed the version of events Rick had been feeding her. But this time, I wasn't going to back down. Emily, I said, my voice low but steady. I worked hard for everything I have. I didn't raise you on handouts, and I sure as hell won't take them now. Emily's head snapped up, and I saw the flicker of concern in her eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. She smiled faintly, trying to keep the conversation light, but there was an edge to her voice when she spoke. Let's just enjoy today, okay? We're here to celebrate. Greg's gaze remained cold, assessing, calculating. He didn't say anything else, but I could feel his eyes on me, studying my every move, weighing my worth. As the meal continued, I realized just how little I belonged in this world. Everything was so perfectly curated, so staged. This was a place of high society, of polished manners and hidden agendas. A place where money dictated everything, from the wine to the seating arrangements. I was a man of honest work, raised by humble hands, and yet I was supposed to sit here and pretend I fit into this world. I pushed my food around the plate, forcing myself to chew, but it all tasted the same, fake. A facade of elegance that hid a rotten core. Rick, what do you think about the reception? Emily asked, drawing me out of my thoughts. He shrugged, his face suddenly losing the warmth it had earlier. It'll be fine, I guess, though I imagine some of my colleagues might be uncomfortable with the guest list. Some people are particular about the company they keep. The words hung in the air like a challenge. I could feel the tension rise, the room shrinking around us as Rick made it clear that my kind, my background, didn't belong here. Emily, you always said the best celebrations are the ones where people feel comfortable being themselves, I said quietly, locking eyes with Rick for the first time. Greg didn't flinch. Instead, he gave me that same smirk, like he knew something I didn't. Yes. Well, I suppose our idea of comfort might differ, he said, his voice smooth and dismissive. But I'll make sure everything's in line. I stood up from the table, excusing myself to grab some air, feeling the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. Emily rushed to follow me, but I stopped her with a simple gesture. I'm fine, honey. I just need a moment. I stepped outside, into the cool breeze of the evening, my hands trembling. I could hear the sound of Emily's laughter behind me, her voice carrying through the open doors. She was happy, so happy in this life she was building with Greg. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing herself in it, losing the part of her that knew the value of what was real, what was earned, and what was true. The quiet of the night wrapped around me, but it couldn't drown out the anger churning inside me. I had to keep fighting for her, for the truth. The evening was growing colder as I walked through the manicured gardens, trying to clear my mind. My heart still pounded from the tension at the table. I kept wondering how everything had gotten so twisted. What happened to my daughter? The girl who grew up with simple values, who understood the importance of hard work and honesty. I leaned against a stone pillar, trying to steady my thoughts. I loved her more than anything, but she was losing herself. Greg's world, this lavish, cold, calculating world, was consuming her. I could see it in her eyes, the way she tried to convince herself that everything was perfect. I wasn't blind. Behind me, I could hear laughter and chatter as the wedding guests filled the ballroom. I couldn't help but feel like an outsider, a ghost in a world I didn't belong to. Just then, Emily appeared at the door, her smile bright but strained. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked, stepping out onto the terrace and walking toward me. I tried to force a smile. "I'm fine, honey. Just needed a moment." She stood beside me, her eyes searching my face, looking for any sign of distress. I knew she was worried. I didn't want to burden her with my frustrations, not today, not on her special day. "Rick and I talked about the wedding budget," she said softly. "He's just trying to make everything perfect for you, for all of us." I turned to face her, my heart heavy. "I know you want this to be perfect, but at what cost, Emily? This is your life, your future. I don't want you to lose sight of what really matters." Emily looked away, her fingers nervously twisting the edge of her dress. "I'm not losing sight of anything, Dad. I'm just trying to make the best of this situation. Rick's been nothing but kind to me, and I know he wants the best for you too." But I saw the doubt in her eyes, and it crushed me. She was defending him, just as she had defended every harsh word he'd thrown my way. "Your mother would never have stood for this," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "She would have seen through it all, seen the way Greg's trying to manipulate you with his money and status." Emily's expression faltered. "I know you're upset, but please, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I love Rick, and I want you to get along with him." I clenched my jaw, trying to control my anger. "I'm not trying to make things harder, Emily, but I can't stand by and watch you fall into this man's world without saying something." She stepped back, her eyes filling with tears. "Why can't you just accept him, Dad? I'm happy. Why does everything have to be about you and your pride?" Her words stung, but I couldn't let her see how much. "I'm not asking you to choose, Emily, but if you want me to accept him, then he needs to accept me. For who I am, not for what he thinks I should be." She didn't answer, just turned and walked back inside, leaving me standing alone, watching her disappear into the crowd. The door clicked shut behind her, and I felt the weight of her absence settle in my chest. The cool breeze didn't help ease the tension still gnawing at me. I watched the guests inside, laughing, drinking, and celebrating as if everything was perfect. But I knew better. I had seen the cracks. Greg's polished exterior was just that, an exterior. His confidence, his manipulation, it all reeked of a man who believed he could buy everything, even love. I tried to shake off the bitter thoughts, but they kept circling in my mind. My daughter was in too deep, and no matter how much I tried to warn her, she was blinded by the glitter of a life she thought she wanted. A life I knew would never make her truly happy. I walked around the estate, trying to lose myself in the quiet. The hedge-lined paths led me through the beautifully manicured grounds, but there was no peace here. I needed to talk to her. Eventually, I found a secluded bench by the garden, surrounded by tall oak trees. The night was settling in, and I could hear the distant hum of the wedding music drifting from the ballroom. I sat down and ran my hands over my weathered face, the lines of age and hardship feeling like they weighed more tonight than ever before. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. I looked at the screen, Emily's name flashing back at me. Hesitating for a moment, I answered, "Dad?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "Can we talk?" I took a deep breath. "Of course, sweetheart. Where are you?" "I'm in the dining room, sitting alone," she said, her words quiet but tinged with guilt. "I don't want to make things worse between us. I need you to understand that I love him, and I really want you to be part of this." The weight of her words hit me hard, but I knew this wasn't the time for anger. "I know you do, Emily, but you need to understand something, too. Love isn't just about what someone can give you. It's about respect, trust, and being able to stand on your own 2 feet. "I know that, Dad," she said, her voice cracking. "I just feel like you're not even trying. Rick's not perfect, but he's been there for me in ways that you don't see." I closed my eyes, hearing the pain in her voice. It was the same tone she had when she was younger, when she would try to explain things to me, like she was a grown-up, but still holding on to the little girl who needed protection. "I'm trying, Emily," I said, my voice soft. "But I won't sit back and let you be blinded by someone who doesn't respect where you come from. Rick may have the money, but he doesn't have the heart, and that's what I'm afraid you're missing." The line went silent for a moment. Then, I heard her whisper, "I don't know what to do anymore. I just want us to be okay." My chest tightened. "We will be, sweetheart. I'll always be here for you. But you need to see the truth for yourself. I can't make that decision for you." "I'll think about it," she said quietly. "I promise." "Good night, Emily," I replied, my voice steady, though my heart was breaking. "Good night, Dad. I love you." The call ended, and I sat there, staring into the night. I knew she had a decision to make. The question was whether she would make it with her eyes wide open, or whether she'd remain blinded by the life she thought she wanted. The next few days passed in a blur. I kept myself busy with the routine, mowing the lawn, fixing the fence, cleaning out the garage, anything to keep my mind from spinning. I couldn't stop thinking about Emily. The phone call had left a hollow feeling in my chest, one I couldn't shake. She was slipping away from me, caught in the web that Greg had spun so carefully around her. And I had no idea how to stop it. I didn't hear from her the next day, or the day after that. Each morning, I'd wake up hoping for a message, but nothing came. I knew she was still processing what I'd said, still trying to reconcile her love for Greg with the reality of who he really was. But I also knew the longer it took, the harder it would be for her to see through the facade. The wedding was only a few days away, and I could feel the pressure mounting. Emily had tried to keep things light when we spoke, but the cracks were starting to show. She was in love with a man who didn't see her for who she truly was, but as a prize to be claimed. And I couldn't just stand by and watch it happen. One afternoon, I took a drive across town, hoping the familiar streets of Oak Park would clear my mind. I passed by the old park where I used to take Emily when she was a kid. The swings were empty now, the bench where I'd sit and watch her play long abandoned. Memories rushed back. Her laughter, her childish complaints, the way she'd run to me when she scraped her knee. It all felt like a lifetime ago. I pulled over and parked the truck at the curb, staring at the empty swings. She wasn't a little girl anymore, and I knew she had to make her own choices. But I still felt responsible. As a father, it was my job to protect her from making the wrong ones. I sat there for a while, my mind racing with thoughts of how to approach the situation. How could I make her see the truth? How could I get her to understand that Greg wasn't the man he appeared to be? Every angle I considered seemed to lead to a dead end. She was already so deep in it. And then it hit me, the one thing I hadn't considered. Maybe I wasn't supposed to save her from this at all. I had spent years teaching her the value of hard work, honesty, and integrity. I had shown her the strength that came from building a life with your own 2 hands. But I couldn't force her to live by those values. She had to find her own way, even if it meant making mistakes along the way. With a heavy sigh, I started the truck and headed home, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Maybe it was time to let go and let Emily make her own choices. But as the days until the wedding ticked by, I couldn't shake the feeling that this battle wasn't over. Not by a long shot. When I arrived home, the house felt quieter than usual. The steady hum of my daily routine seemed even more distant now. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Emily and her future. The phone rang as I walked through the door. My heart skipped when I saw her name on the screen. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hey, Dad." Emily's voice came through the speaker, a mixture of warmth and apprehension. "I think we need to talk." I could hear the uncertainty in her tone, and it made my chest tighten. "Of course, sweetheart. I'm here. What's going on?" She paused for a moment, and then I heard her take a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About what you said about Greg. I don't know. I just don't know where to start." I leaned back against the doorframe, the weight of her words pressing down on me. "Take your time, Emily. I'm not going anywhere. I've been caught up in this idea of the perfect wedding, the perfect life," she said, her voice shaking. "And I thought Greg was the perfect person to give me that. But now, I don't know. I've been hearing your words in my head, and I can't shake the feeling that I'm being blinded by something I don't even understand." I closed my eyes, taking a moment to absorb what she was saying. I could feel the raw emotion in her voice, the struggle she was going through. She was torn, and I knew it wasn't easy for her. "I don't want you to think I'm not grateful for everything Greg has done for me," she continued. "But I'm starting to see things differently. Maybe I've been ignoring the signs because I wanted this life so badly. But I don't want to lose myself in it, Dad. I don't want to lose who I am." I exhaled slowly, relief flooding through me. "You're not going to lose yourself, Emily. I just want you to be happy. I want you to be with someone who sees you for who you really are, not just what they can take from you." She was silent for a moment. "I don't know what to do, Dad." I smiled softly, though I knew she couldn't see me. "You don't have to figure everything out right now. Just take it one step at a time. And remember, I'm always here for you, no matter what." Emily's voice broke through the silence again, softer this time. "Thanks, Dad. I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. The conversation ended with a final click, and I stood there for a moment, staring at the phone in my hand. I had no idea where this would go, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had hope again. The next few days felt like a slow burn. Emily and I hadn't talked much since that phone call. There was still so much to unpack, so many things left unsaid. I knew she was processing everything, but part of me wondered if I had pushed her too hard. The last thing I wanted was to drive her further into Greg's world, where appearances mattered more than anything real. I spent the week keeping busy, just like I had before, but the anxiety never left. Every time I went to bed, I replayed our conversation in my mind. Was I wrong? Was I being too stubborn? Maybe Greg wasn't as bad as I thought. But then, every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. That smug look, the coldness in his gaze, and I knew I couldn't let go of what I believed. Saturday came, and the wedding was looming. The day before, Emily had sent me a text. "Can we talk tomorrow? I need to figure this out before the wedding." I had hoped for this moment, but the nervousness in her message told me it wasn't going to be easy. I hadn't heard from her much, so I wasn't sure where her head was at. But I knew it was time for me to lay everything out, no more dancing around the issue. I woke up early, determined to stay calm. I grabbed a cup of coffee and sat in the small kitchen, staring at the clock. It was almost time for Emily to arrive. My heart raced, but I forced myself to slow down, taking deep breaths. When the doorbell finally rang, I stood up and walked slowly to the door. I could feel the weight of the conversation pressing down on me. I had to be patient, listen, and let Emily find her own path, even if it meant hearing things I didn't want to hear. I opened the door, and there she stood. My daughter, still so much like the little girl who'd run to me with scraped knees, but now standing before me as a woman caught between two worlds. Her eyes were tired, but there was a spark in them, a spark I hadn't seen in a while. She was trying to make sense of everything, trying to figure out who she was in all of this. "Hey, Dad," she said softly. "Can we talk?" "Of course," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. We both sat down in the living room, the silence between us heavy with anticipation. "I've been thinking a lot," Emily began, her voice tentative, "about what you said, and about everything that's been happening. I need to figure out where I stand." I nodded, not wanting to interrupt. She needed to speak first, to come to her own conclusions. "I love Greg," she said quietly, "but I don't know if that's enough anymore. I don't know if I'm seeing him for who he really is, or just for who I want him to be. I feel like I've been lying to myself." My heart clenched, but I didn't speak. I waited. I don't want to lose you, Dad, she continued. But I also don't want to be the kind of person who just gives in to what others expect of me. I thought Greg was everything I wanted, but now I'm not so sure. I sat back, feeling the weight of her words. I could see it in her face, the conflict, the doubt. It was a hard pill for her to swallow, but she was finally opening her eyes. Emily, I said softly, my voice steady but full of emotion. I never wanted to be the one who made you doubt your choices. But I couldn't stand by and watch you lose yourself. You're strong. You've always been strong, and I just want you to remember that. She wiped a tear from her cheek, and for the first time in weeks, I saw the daughter I raised, the girl who could stand up for herself and fight for what was right. She wasn't just Greg's fiancée anymore. She was Emily, and that was what mattered. I don't know what's going to happen with Greg, she said, shaking her head. But I do know that I need to find myself again. I don't want to lose who I am. I reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. You won't lose yourself, sweetheart. You're stronger than you think. And no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you. Always. Emily nodded, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. I think I need to talk to Greg. I need to understand what's really going on with him. And with me. That's all I'm asking, I said, my voice soft. Take the time you need. You're not alone in this. The room was quiet for a moment, but this time, it was a comfortable silence. She was finally beginning to find her own path, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful again. The next few days felt like a slow march towards something uncertain. Emily seemed more at peace, but I could tell the weight of her decision still lingered. She had reached out to Greg, I knew that much. But what had they talked about? What had he said? I didn't know, and part of me was afraid to ask. It was the night before the wedding, and Emily hadn't called or texted. My nerves were on edge, wondering where her heart was in all of this. Had she made up her mind, or was she still struggling with what I had said to her? I sat in the living room, watching the clock tick closer to midnight. The house was too quiet, the silence amplifying every doubt that crept into my mind. But then my phone buzzed on the table, and I nearly jumped out of my chair. I grabbed it quickly, seeing Emily's name on the screen. My heart pounded. Hey, Dad. Her voice came through, soft but steady. Can we talk? I know the wedding is tomorrow, but I need to tell you something. I stood up, pacing in the living room. Of course, sweetheart. What's going on? She sighed, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. I talked to Greg. I told him everything. About you, about how I've been feeling. I think I've made a mistake. I froze, the words sinking in slowly. Emily, what are you saying? I'm not going to marry him, she said, and for the first time in days, I could breathe again. I realized that I was chasing a life that wasn't mine. I love you, Dad, and I need to do this on my terms, not because of some fantasy I thought I wanted. My chest tightened, and I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes. You don't have to explain, Emily. You've made the right choice. I hope so, she whispered. But I'm scared, Dad. I don't know what happens next. I smiled softly, the weight lifting off my shoulders. We'll figure it out, together. As I hung up the phone, I let out a long breath, feeling a relief I hadn't realized I needed. Tomorrow wasn't going to be about the wedding. It was going to be about my daughter finding her way, and I would be there, no matter what. The wedding day arrived, and I could feel the tension building in the air. There was no wedding for me, not anymore. Emily had made her decision, but there was still a part of me that couldn't shake the feeling that everything was moving too fast. Could she truly walk away from Greg and the life he offered her? Or would she second-guess herself, like so many people do when they're faced with tough decisions? I spent the morning pacing around my house, unable to sit still. The neighborhood was quiet, the usual sounds of children playing and dogs barking absent. I couldn't focus on anything, not the yard work, not the news on TV. My mind kept returning to Emily. What was she feeling? What had Greg said when she told him? I tried to distract myself by grabbing a coffee and sitting on the front porch, hoping for some clarity, but it didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, my little girl, standing at the altar, about to marry a man I didn't trust. It was a relief to know she had made the decision to walk away from him, but I still couldn't shake the fear that she might regret it later. The phone buzzed in my pocket, and I reached for it immediately. It was a message from Emily. Dad, I need you. Can you meet me at the park? I'm really scared. My heart skipped a beat. I grabbed my jacket and left the house, my truck rumbling to life with urgency. It didn't take long to get to the park. It was a familiar place, one Emily and I had spent countless hours in over the years. As I parked, I saw her standing near the swings, looking lost in thought. She was pacing, her hands wringing nervously as she glanced around. I stepped out of the truck and walked toward her, not saying anything at first. She looked up, and when our eyes met, I could see the vulnerability in hers. "Hey," I said softly, taking a step closer. "You okay?" She nodded, but I could tell she was far from it. "I don't know, Dad. I feel like I'm making the wrong decision, but I also know I can't go through with it. I don't want to marry him, but I'm scared of what that means." I stepped beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "It means you're thinking for yourself, Emily. It means you're choosing your own path, even if it's scary." She took a shaky breath, trying to hold back tears. "But I love him. How can I love him and walk away at the same time?" I sighed, looking at her with a deep understanding. "Love doesn't always mean staying, sweetheart. Sometimes it means letting go." She wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. "I know. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself." "Forgive yourself for what?" I asked, confused. "For everything. For disappointing you. For letting Greg control me. For not seeing it sooner." I pulled her into a hug, feeling her tears soak through my shirt. "You haven't disappointed me, Emily. You're my daughter, and I will always be proud of you, no matter what." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Thanks, Dad. I think I needed to hear that. I'm always here, honey. You're not alone in this. We'll figure it out, together." She smiled weakly, the first real smile I'd seen from her in days. "I think I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to take control of my life again." I nodded, a sense of pride welling up inside me. That's the daughter I raised. Emily stood taller, her posture shifting as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "You're right, Dad. I can't live my life for other people. I have to live it for myself." And in that moment, I knew she was going to be okay. The decision had been made, but the weight of it still hung in the air. Emily's voice had steadied, but the uncertainty in her eyes hadn't entirely faded. We stood together in the park for a while longer, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the grass. I could tell she was processing everything, and I was grateful that she wasn't doing it alone. She squeezed my hand, looking up at me with a hesitant smile. "Dad, I think I need to go see Greg. I have to explain things to him, at least." I nodded, my heart heavy but proud of her. "I'll be here when you get back. Just remember, you don't owe him an explanation for anything. You're doing what's right for you." She hugged me again, this time more tightly, before turning toward her car. I watched her walk away, her back straight, her steps purposeful. I knew this wasn't going to be easy for her. Even if she was doing the right thing, walking away from a life she'd thought she wanted, it would hurt. It would always hurt. As I headed back to my truck, my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Rick. "John, we need to talk. Meet me at the park in 30 minutes. I want to clear the air before tomorrow." I stared at the screen, my fingers frozen above the keys. I wasn't sure what he wanted to say, but I had a feeling I knew exactly how this conversation would go. It would be a final attempt to manipulate me, to make me question everything I had just witnessed Emily decide. I took a deep breath and started the truck, heading for the park again. I wasn't afraid of Rick. I wasn't even worried. What I was, though, was tired. Tired of the games. Tired of the pretentiousness. Tired of being made to feel less than because I didn't have a bank account that rivaled his. But most of all, I was tired of the idea that Emily had to choose between me and the world he'd created for her. That wasn't a choice she should ever have to make. The park was quiet when I arrived. The sun was dipping lower, casting a golden glow on everything it touched. I saw Rick standing near the benches, his posture stiff, his gaze fixed on the ground. He looked out of place here, just as I had felt at his mansion. I walked up to him, not bothering with pleasantries. "You wanted to talk. Let's talk." He glanced up at me, his face guarded. I'm not going to lie. I was hoping we could sort things out before the wedding tomorrow. I crossed my arms, watching him closely. "Sort things out? You mean, you're hoping I'll back off? That I'll stop standing in the way of what you want?" Rick's eyes flickered with something like frustration. "No, John. I just want to make sure Emily's happy." "Emily's happiness isn't about you and your money," I shot back. "She needs to see the truth about you, and if that means she's not going to marry you, then so be it." He clenched his jaw, clearly trying to keep his temper in check. You don't know her like I do. That's the point, I replied. I know her better than you ever will. There was a long silence between us, and I could see the tension in Rick's shoulders, the way his hands fidgeted at his sides. He was losing control, and that made me feel just a little bit better. I'm not giving up on her, Rick finally said, his voice low. I'm not going to let you poison her mind. I'm not poisoning her mind, Rick, I said calmly. I'm just telling her the truth. And the truth is, you're not who you say you are. He took a step toward me, his eyes cold. You don't understand the kind of life I'm offering her. You're just some factory worker. What do you know about this world? I stepped closer, matching his tone. I know more about real life than you could ever learn in your little world of privilege. Emily doesn't need your money. She needs her father. The words hit him harder than I expected. He paused, his mouth tightening. I'm not the enemy here, John. Maybe not, I said quietly. But you're not the solution either. I turned to leave, but just before I reached my truck, I heard him call after me. You don't know what it's like to be in my shoes. I didn't turn around. No, Rick, I don't. But I know what it's like to lose my daughter to a man who doesn't deserve her. The drive home felt different now. It wasn't the usual journey back to my quiet little house. It wasn't just the weight of the conversation with Rick still heavy on my mind. No, this time there was something else, a new understanding of what Emily had to go through and what I had to do next. I couldn't stay in Oak Park forever. The world was changing, and Emily was changing with it. I'd spent most of her life trying to protect her, shelter her from things I thought might hurt her, and now I realized that wasn't always the best way to show love. Sometimes, you had to let them make their own choices, even if you knew it would hurt. But what if she chose wrong? What if she was making the biggest mistake of her life by walking away from Greg? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I couldn't let it hold me back. She had made her decision, and now it was up to me to support her, no matter what. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Emily's car parked out front. She was home. My heart gave a little lurch in my chest, unsure of what to expect when I walked inside. Had she gone back to Greg? Was she still questioning her choices? I opened the door slowly, peeking into the quiet living room. Emily was sitting on the couch, her hands clasped together tightly. She looked up when she heard me, her face softening as she smiled. "Dad," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "I'm glad you're back." I closed the door behind me, walking toward her. "How are you holding up?" She let out a deep breath, glancing away for a moment. "I talked to Greg, and then I came home. I couldn't go through with it, Dad. I couldn't marry him." My chest tightened, a sense of calm washing over me at the same time. "You don't have to explain yourself, Emily." "I know," she replied softly, "but I feel like I need to. I was so caught up in what I thought I wanted that I couldn't see what was really happening. I thought I could fix it, but I don't think I was ever supposed to fix him." I nodded, sitting beside her. "You don't have to fix anyone, Emily. Not him, and not yourself. You're enough just as you are." She leaned into me, her head resting on my shoulder. "I was so scared, Dad. Scared that if I let go of that life, I'd lose everything. But I think I was just holding on to the wrong thing." I squeezed her hand gently. "Sometimes the hardest thing is letting go of something that isn't meant for you. But you're not alone. Not now, and not ever." Emily pulled back slightly, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Dad. I don't know what I would have done without you." "You'll never have to find out," I said, my voice firm with a love that only a father could feel. "I've got you always." The next few days passed quietly, but the undercurrent of tension hadn't quite faded. Emily was still processing everything, her emotions in a constant flux. I tried not to push her too much, giving her the space she needed, but I also couldn't help but worry. Was she truly making the right choice? I had to trust her, but as a father, that wasn't always easy. We spent the next few days talking more, not just about Greg or the wedding, but about everything. Her future, her career, her dreams. I wanted her to remember that she had more options than just the life Greg was offering. There was a whole world out there, full of possibilities, and she didn't need to be tied to anyone's expectations. One evening, as I was sitting on the porch with a glass of whiskey, I heard Emily's car pull into the driveway. I turned to see her stepping out of the car, holding a small envelope in her hand. My heart skipped, unsure of what to expect. She had a look on her face that I couldn't quite read. "Dad," she called as she approached. "Can we talk?" "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, putting the glass down and standing up. "What's going on?" She handed me the envelope. I got something in the mail today. It's from Greg. I took the envelope, examining it carefully before opening it. Inside was a letter, no, an apology. A long, detailed apology from Greg, filled with promises to change, to be a better man, to make things right with her, with me. But what caught my attention was the final line. I still love you, and I'm willing to do anything to prove it. Please give me a chance. I set the letter down slowly, feeling the weight of his words. Greg had clearly thought this would change everything. He believed that words, especially words like that, could fix what was broken. But I knew better. Love wasn't about promises. It was about actions. I don't know what to do with this, Dad, Emily said, her voice shaking slightly. I know I ended things with him, but reading this, I feel guilty. I looked at her, my heart heavy with understanding. You don't owe him anything, Emily. He made his choices, just like you've made yours. Don't let his words pull you back into something you've already walked away from. She nodded slowly, wiping a tear away. I know, but part of me still wants to believe him. Part of me still wants to fix things. You can't fix someone else's mistakes, sweetheart. You can only fix your own. She stared at the letter for a moment longer, then folded it back up and handed it to me. I think I'm done with him for good. I've made my choice, and I'm sticking with it. I took the letter and put it in my pocket, giving her a proud smile. That's my girl. The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind, but in an odd way, they brought a sense of clarity. Emily had made her decision, and I could see the confidence returning in her. She wasn't looking for validation anymore. She had found it within herself. She was standing tall, despite the overwhelming pressure from Greg and his world. I tried to stay out of her way while still offering my support. She didn't need me to tell her what to do. She needed me to be there when she needed a sounding board. And that was exactly what I was doing. The truth was, I was more proud of her than I could ever express. We didn't talk much about Greg anymore, though I could tell he still haunted her thoughts. I knew she was struggling with guilt, that nagging feeling of wondering if she'd made the right choice. I had seen it in her face when she mentioned him. But I wasn't about to make her feel like she had to justify her decision to anyone, least of all me. It was the morning of the wedding, and Emily came to me, her eyes searching mine. Dad, I need your help with something, she said, her voice shaky. I looked at her, ready for whatever she needed. Of course, sweetheart. Anything. She hesitated, glancing down at the floor. I've been thinking about everything, and I'm still not sure if I made the right decision. It feels like I'm giving up on so much, and part of me wonders if I'm just running away. I sat down beside her, taking her hand gently in mine. Emily, you didn't run away. You're not running from anything. You're stepping into a new chapter of your life, one that's about you, not about anyone else. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You are, I said firmly. You've always been strong enough. You've been stronger than you give yourself credit for. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with uncertainty. I wish I could be sure, Dad. I just want to make the right choice for myself. You already did, I replied with conviction. You've already chosen what's right for you. It's not about making the perfect choice. It's about living the life that's true to you. She smiled, a small but genuine smile, and I could see the weight lifting off her shoulders. Thank you, Dad. I hugged her tightly, feeling the love between us stronger than it had ever been. You're going to be okay, Emily. You've got this. And you've got me. As we stood together, ready to face whatever came next, I realized something. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about me too, finding my place in her new life and learning to let go. The wedding may have been off, but in that moment, I knew that our journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. The morning of what was supposed to be Emily's wedding, the air outside felt crisp, as if the world was holding its breath. The decision had been made, the wedding had been canceled, and yet there was still a strange, surreal quality to everything. I had hoped this day would be different. I'd hoped for peace, for closure, for some kind of resolution. But instead, there was only quiet. Emily had gone out to meet with some of her friends, to talk things over, to find clarity. I gave her the space she needed, knowing it wouldn't be long before she returned with more questions than answers. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I sat alone in the living room, the soft hum of the house echoing in the silence. I thought back to the days before Emily had met Greg, to the times when it was just the two of us. I had spent years teaching her about life, about the value of hard work, the importance of knowing who you were. I had always been there for her, every scraped knee, every heartbreak, every triumph. But now, things felt different. She was growing up, and I knew I couldn't protect her from every mistake. All I could do was be there when she needed me. The phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered it anyway, my pulse quickening as I pressed the phone to my ear. Mr. Miller? The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but the tone was firm. This is Greg. I need to speak with you. I felt my stomach drop. I hadn't heard from him in days, not since that confrontation at the park. My instincts told me this was not going to be a pleasant conversation. I'm listening, I said, my voice steady, though I could feel the tension building inside me. I think we need to clear the air, Greg continued. I realize things between us have been tense, but I need you to understand something. I never intended to hurt Emily. I just wanted the best for her. I rolled my eyes, but I kept my tone calm. And how's that working out for you? I know I messed up, he said, his voice more subdued. But Emily, she's confused. I want to fix things, Mr. Miller. I want to make this right. For her. For us. I could hear the desperation in his words, and I couldn't help but feel a slight pang of pity. But it didn't change anything. You can't fix what's already broken, I replied coldly. You didn't break her, Greg, but you sure as hell tried to control her. And that's not something I'm willing to let slide. There was silence on the other end, then a deep sigh. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to make things right. Emily deserves better. She deserves more than you're offering, Greg, I said firmly. You've already shown her who you really are. She's better off without you. I heard him take a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts. Then I guess we're done here. I could feel the finality in his words, and yet, I knew this wasn't truly over. Not yet. Goodbye, Greg, I said before hanging up. I stood up, letting the silence settle in again. I had said what I needed to say. I wasn't going to beg Emily to stay away from him. I wasn't going to be the villain in her story. All I could do was be the father she needed, whether she realized it or not. And as the day stretched on, I knew the real work was just beginning. The next morning, Emily was quieter than usual. She sat at the kitchen table, her coffee cooling in front of her, her eyes distant. I could tell she was still processing everything. The call with Greg, the weight of her decision. The silence between us felt heavier now, like the calm before a storm. I sat down across from her, unsure of what to say, but knowing we couldn't keep dancing around this anymore. You okay? I asked softly, trying to meet her eyes. She looked up at me, her expression conflicted. I don't know, Dad. Part of me feels like I did the right thing, but another part of me feels like I'm giving up on something that could have been great. I nodded, understanding the internal battle. It's hard to walk away from something when you've invested so much into it. But you didn't walk away from love, Emily. You walked away from a life that wasn't right for you. She bit her lip, as if wrestling with the truth of that statement. But how do I know if I'm making the right choice? How do I know if I'm doing this because I really want to, or just because I'm scared? I reached across the table and took her hand, squeezing it gently. Sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones we make when we're scared. But that doesn't make them the wrong ones. You're learning to trust yourself, Emily. You're learning to listen to what you need, not just what everyone else thinks you need. She let out a shaky breath, a tear slipping down her cheek. I just don't want to regret this, Dad. I don't want to look back and think I threw away something real. You won't regret it, I said, my voice firm but kind. You'll regret staying in something that didn't honor who you are. You're doing the right thing. Trust that. Emily wiped her eyes and looked at me, her face softening with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. I don't know what comes next. I don't know what my future looks like without him in it. I smiled softly, feeling a glimmer of hope for her. I don't know what the future holds either, but that's what makes it yours. You have the power to make it whatever you want it to be. And I'll be here every step of the way. She gave me a small smile, one that felt more genuine than any I'd seen in the last few days. Thanks, Dad. I'm glad I have you. I reached out and pulled her into a hug, holding her tight as the weight of everything we had been through hung between us. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were both starting to move forward. The following weeks were a mix of silence and small steps forward. Emily kept herself busy, diving into work and spending time with friends. She didn't immediately cut ties with Greg, though. She needed time to process everything, to find her footing again. I could see the shift in her, though. There was a new strength in the way she carried herself, a quiet confidence that had been missing before. I was proud of her, but I also knew it wasn't over. Not completely. She came over to my house one evening, the first time in a while. We sat together in the living room, a comfortable silence between us. I was working on an old chair I'd been fixing up for months, but every now and then, I'd look up and catch her staring off into space, deep in thought. "You haven't said much lately," I said, setting down the tools and leaning back in my chair. "How are you really feeling?" She didn't immediately answer. Instead, she took a long sip of her coffee and sighed. "I've been thinking a lot, Dad. I think I made the right choice, but I still miss him. It's not easy. It's hard to admit that." I could see the struggle in her eyes, the part of her that hadn't quite let go yet. "It's okay to miss him, Emily. Just because you walk away from someone doesn't mean you forget them. But missing someone doesn't mean you're supposed to go back. It means you're healing, and healing takes time." She nodded slowly, looking at her hands in her lap. "I'm not sure how to move on from that. How to stop looking back at what could have been." I smiled softly. "You don't need to have it all figured out right now. Just take things one step at a time. You don't need to force yourself to forget him, but you also don't need to let him control your future." She looked up at me then, a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty in her eyes. "I just want to make sure I don't mess this up. I don't want to hurt myself again." I reached out, placing my hand on hers. "You're not messing it up. You're learning, Emily. You're finding yourself again. And that's never a mistake." She smiled faintly, squeezing my hand in return. "Thanks, Dad. I think I'm starting to get it." We sat there for a while, the sound of the ticking clock filling the room. There were no answers, no sudden epiphanies. But there was progress, and sometimes that's all we can hope for.